Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. Today is Saturday, Shabbat Shalom, on the 27th of December 2025, and the time is 9:34 a.m. It's a much cooler morning this morning, 23 degrees currently in Brisbane, Australia, and quite a bit of respite after days of incessant grinding, sweltering, nerve fraying, mind obliterating heat. So I've got the birdies out of bed, well, they were out of bed anyway, but I've uncovered them and they're happily eating their food. I bought this mix yesterday at Capalaba Produce. They call themselves Brookies now. And let me just show you. It's called Red Gum Forage Mix, and it's got their favourite sunflower seeds, but it's got, you know, a whole almond shell, not many of those, but I put one in their little toy box to just play with, because they don't really eat it. But it's got all these dried fruits, and Kermie loved it so much he immediately picked out the green and papaya dried fruits and threw them in the water bowl and manked up the water. So I change the water each day anyway. But look how colourful and pretty it is, and they're really loving it, so I think I'll keep buying that in the future. I'm delighted that they like it. But Bo picks out all the dried banana pieces. He doesn't like banana at all. Just takes one look at it and goes, ugh, throws it out. It's quite comical. Did I say Bo? I meant Kermie. But anyway, they both won't eat the banana, so I'll probably end up throwing that out to the wild birds. I bought a big sack of wild bird seed for the wild birds too, because it upset me so much that I run out, and they do come. Turkey comes and he asks, sits here at my window and looks at me, you know. It's sweet. And all yesterday afternoon, I did have the seed, but I hadn't cracked it open yet because I wanted to put it in one of the plastic bins I keep things in. And I had to wash the only bin I had to wash it out that was spare. And so he was a bit upset, but I'm going to put food out for them. I don't know, when I see him I'll put food out for them today, because they haven't had anything from me for a few days now. And I also bought wet lorikeet mix. I meant to buy the dry one, but never mind. I'll mix it up as you make a little porridge. When the lorikeets come back, I've got plenty of food to keep feeding them with now. I've decided that's my contract with the gods. Look after the wild birds that come to my garden, and you know, not spoil them too lavishly, because I don't want them to be codependent, but you know, just add to their food sources a bit. And it makes me happy to see them eating and interacting with me here at Sacred Space Garden. So it's a lovely thing. And they also get the fruit that my birds aren't eating, which is usually a day or two old by then, but the wild birds don't seem to mind. My boys are getting quite spoilt, not eating their fruit even. Well, what can I say about that? So Bo's going through the container that has all those goodies in it. It's actually quite delightful. Kermie chased him away from it before and was a bit mean, but he must have decided to let the little one eat now. Right, I'm quite tired. I didn't go to bed till 1:30, and then I only slept about can't remember what it said. I think it was 8 hours, but I just feel a bit exhausted still. I guess it's partially heat exhaustion from the grinding, long days of heat. So, but I sat last night in my lovely air-conditioned front living room, and I spun wool, alpaca wool, and I spun quite a lot actually. I'd had trouble with it breaking a lot, but for some reason last night I had a good run of it, and it managed to get a whole bobbin full. It's a lot of work, but I watched a kind of a horror movie, which was interesting, called Sheltered, about some demon that was jumping from body to body, but using this man who had multiple personality disorder or dissociative disorder. It was a very interesting movie from the viewpoint of the female psychiatrist that was treating him, and then after a while realised she had more of a supernatural problem at hand than just a mental health issue. It was very, very fascinating. Gave me a lot to think about actually. Sometimes I worry, when I'm under full-blown spiritual attack, how much is mental, how much is physical and environmental too. You've got to kind of separate it out quite logically and coherently, otherwise you really would go mad. But Mama T has no intention of going mad. But I've seen the increase in personality disorders and dementias and general lunacy, and it's very chilling and confronting for me. So I'm kind of riding that bus, Gus, trying not to lick the windows with the rest of them, you understand? And I'm holding my own integrity, which is very, very potent and powerful, but I'm fragile like everyone else, and people keep trying to fucking break me, don't they? Not wise, especially choosing to do that over the Christmas period. Dumb, dumb, dumb and dumber. But anyway, I'm all right for now. I'm on my own, and there's peace and there's quiet, and I'll be conserving my psychic and mental and emotional and physical and financial energies for my own resources, instead of pouring into empty vessels that ultimately don't have my back. So that's been a kind of a grief that I've gone through this last few weeks. But it's an important reminder, especially with the shooting in Bondi, that especially as a Jew, that safety has to come from within, from our own fortitude, and keep our wits about us, and know whom around us is trustworthy and genuinely authentic and loving and safe to be with. I learnt that lesson as a young woman from, ironically, Israelis that were homicidal and dared to put their hands on my throat, that it doesn't matter what religion or culture you come from, if you're evil and you hate women, it eventually finds its way out, externalized, and for some fakakta reason that makes no sense to me, they kept predating on me. There will be no more predation. Mama T has metamorphosed into her own power and predate on me at great personal risk. The gods have spoken. So, but the house and land I live on have been very peaceful and very quiet in recent months, sometimes a bit too quiet, which makes me wonder if something's cooking. But the neighbourhood have all been very head down, keeping to themselves, avoidant, not particularly friendly anymore. And you know, what have you, I don't care. So everyone's busy living their own lives and doing the best they can to get through this psychotic zeitgeist. And it really is quite psychotic. Only a psychotic would willingly inject themselves with a bioweapon and then lash out at the one woman who said no. Psychosis. Serious psychosis. But I have to ride out the storm along with everyone else and stay sane and sanguine in my own body, mind and spirit, and not let the idiots who really were quite idiotic and psychotic get to me, because they've been seriously altered now and they actually can't help themselves. So I have to practice polite avoidance, but also a measure of consternation and compassion, because they didn't realise that they were lied to from the very beginning. So they didn't actually realise what it was they were signing up for and how much of their souls they've seeded when they promoted that product, and thought that everything would be just fine and dandy and hunky-dory. Well, it wasn't, and it isn't, and it never will be. So I have to live with that knowledge that I expected that was going to be the outcome. And people lashing out at me for speaking my truth, or even reporting my dreams, which for me are actually pattern recognition and sometimes markers like you have at a high tide that tell you when you're about to be inundated. My dreams function sometimes as an early warning system. So I make no apologies for my dreams or my dream expression, or even for my existence. I'm here for a reason. Some of you might not like it. That's just too bad for you. Wasn't wise to fuck with the Tanya, knowing that she came in clean and clear with only love and affection in her heart, wanting to belong. But thank you for the reminder that I belong to no human mortal being or indeed group. I've always said that I'm like Groucho Marx, that I can belong to no club that will have me as a member, and it's a painful truism that I still seem to wish, because it's actually brainwashed into us from birth, to find a tribe and a people that include me and love me and treat me with kindness and respect. And every time that gets ripped away, I act as though I'm surprised, but really, same old, isn't it? I've gone through that since infancy. It's been hammered home to me a multitude of times that I'm not safe with my fellow Homo sapiens, and even less safe now that they are no longer fully Homo sapiens, but altered into something dark and ruthless and reptilian. Guess that was the plan with the nanobot technology all along. So, Mama T chooses not to be dark and ruthless and reptilian, but if push comes to shove, I guess I can activate that part of my brain, the limbic system, as best as the next flesh suit for my own survival. But I pray with every fibre of my being that it never comes to that. So, happy fucking Saturday. Here we go with chapter 16 of Boadicea's Dreaming the Serpent Spear. Between one night and the next, the blackthorn flowered. White blossoms scattered the landscape, sporadic as old snow in the brown melt of spring. Heather lay dormant, bracken not yet unfurled. The mountains of the west were barriers of mud and towering rock, left by a capricious child god to keep the legions from Mona and all who took refuge there. That was the easy way to see it, the way that did not feed into crippling nightmares and waking visions that were decimating the troops as effectively as had the zealots of the Republic, leaving 1 in 10 men as useless as if they were dead. It's very interesting when they rolled out the COVID vaccines that the media put a request for people to tell everyone, tell them, whoever they are, about our dreams. I've always been a dreamer, so I just laughed at that. I reveal my dreams for my purposes, not for theirs. But I found it very strange that they were asking the multitudes, the masses, to report their dreams, almost as though they were searching for some kind of consciousness to be brought to awareness by the masses. I found that very, very alarming and odd. You know, like the person that actually tries to punish me for being a dreamer, that's odd too. Afraid for truths to be revealed and the curtain to be pulled back, and basic bloody human decency to be en flagrant, on show for everyone to see. Someone has to lead by example, because you're not. Not a word was spoken about the Bondi shooting. Not one word. Showed me how shallow you all really are. How shameful and shallow. It's ghastly. But that's how the Holocaust was enacted too. Shallow, entitled, spoilt people in denial, going along with it just to get along. Because, you know, Jews. Didn't stop with just the Jews though, did it? If you know your history, you'll remember that very soon, when they're not coming for the Jews, they'll be coming for you as well. Be aware. No stone unturned when evil marches across this land. No one's safe. Anyway, In truth, more than 1 in 10 was incapacitated. Sounds a bit familiar now, actually, for different reasons, but same perpetrators, really. Same demonic invaders infesting our minds, bodies and spirits. Quintus Valerius Corvus, prefect of the 5th Gaulish Cavalry Wing, sat at his desk in the relative calm of his tent and listened to the wind hiss through the guy lines, wishing he could hear in it words of comfort that would erase the detailed personnel listings being read to him by Ursus, the decurion of the 2nd Troop. And Flavius has the run so badly he can barely get up from the latrines to drink water before he has to sit back down and let it flood straight out again from the other end. Dreadful. Dreadful. Sabinius says it's all in their minds. There's nothing wrong with the food or the water or the weather. They're just shit scared of the dreamers and what they do to men they capture alive. Sabinius is fine. He would be. He lived in Britannia long enough to know the dreamers do nothing we don't do. They've never yet crucified anyone, or even attempted to. Corvus spun a knife end on between his hands. The tip scored a small reddening dent in his left index finger. A falcon's head in hollow bronze made the hilt. It rolled cool and smooth against his palm, a talisman against the jagged ache of the wind. What matters is how many are fit to fight. Out of 500 men, we have at most 340 who could sit on a horse, and at least 30 of those would be more of a danger to themselves than to the enemy in combat. It isn't enough. It's enough if all we're going to do is sit here and watch the heather come into bloom on the mountainside while the governor counts his stocks of javelins and tries to tell the Batavians that their great-great-grandfathers once swam the Rhine in full armour, so they'll have no problems at all with the straits. Ursus jutted his chin, aiming for defiance and falling as ever, halfway short. Tells me he had a weak chin. I'm joking about that. Probably did it, but yeah. The scabs of old flea bites showed in a crop where his helmet strap rested. Ooh, sounds nasty, doesn't it? He needed to shave, but then almost all of the men needed to shave, and the only ones without fleas were those already dead. Ursus was simply more solidly earthen than the rest of his peers, less taken with the pretensions of office. On most days, that was a good thing. Corvus sighed and placed his knife edgeways onto the writing tablet on which he had made his notes. Then, placed his stylus as a wedge beneath to stop it rolling off the table. And nothing here was on the flat except the governor's tent. One of the few advantages of rank was that his table was at least level enough to balance a half-full beaker on without slopping wine into the mud. Ursus was still waiting for him, doing his best to appear at ease. Mildly, Corvus said, "That's treason. I should have you flogged in front of the entire wing, and you know it. Just because you escaped the nightmare of the dreamers, there's no need to bring on a dose of those unique to Rome. What do you imagine? It is the dreamers, then? You believe, Sabinius, that they're making it all happen?" "Of course it is. I can feel them doing it. The only question is what else they have waiting for us when we begin to advance." "Don't stare like that, man. It's unhealthy. Think. If you're dreaming peacefully of the olive groves you remember from childhood, and suddenly the trees begin to walk and the bark shows human faces and they all speak with one voice of the doom that awaits the moment you wake up, and this happens 4 nights without a break, then you can be fairly sure it's coming from the outside. The trick is to learn to make friends with the speaking trees, which is what we should have done with the dreamers, and we wouldn't have half of our men out of action. It's true, you know. Respect crosses all paradigms, cultures, fields of operation, paradigms, dimensions, multiverses. Come on, we should be with the governor. Don't ask him where we're going to attack, when we're going to attack. He won't thank you for it. Corvus held open the tent flap. Outside, rain had begun to fall, turning almost to sleet. I need another cup of tea, people of Earth. It's going to rain here soon, I think, too. Maybe. It's a very grey, murky day, but I'm grateful that it's cooler. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's grateful that it's cooler. He reached his cloak from the bench and pulled it tight around his shoulders. Beside him, Ursus pulled on a balding, poorly cured wolf skin, bought for a silver coin 10 years before from a Dacian trader. The thing stank and earned him no friends, but it had been his luck charm for 3 years, and a good day's battle had persuaded him that it was not necessary. The fact that he had unearthed it now did not bode well, wanting his wolf spirit with him. My wolf spirit never leaves me. It doesn't always make its presence known, but if I ask for its assistance in a nanosecond. It's a powerful spirit too. I never really met a wolf in ordinary reality and real world applications. They're fearsome creatures, not something to be fucked with. My Ojibwa friend was testing me at one time, and he's a Meduan in the Ojibwa culture and tribe, and he sent a wolf to me one night, and he said to me the next day, because we were talking, you know, on Messenger, on Paltalk we were talking. He said to me, I met your wolf last night. I said, oh, did you? You didn't believe I had a wolf totem, did you? He said, oh, I wondered about that. I didn't have reason to think that you would lie about it, but he said, I just wondered if it was just your imagination. Okay, I said. How did you go with that encounter? I said, you shouldn't come to me in the night when I'm sleeping, when I'm vulnerable, lying supine, unconscious in the astral worlds. Yes, he said, that's part of the problem. You're in a different time zone to me, so I forget that my daytime you're sleeping. He said, so I sent my wolf to you, and he said, my wolf met your wolf. And he said, my wolf, you know, I'm Native American, is a powerful totem. Of course, I said, I comprehend that. Your wolf, he said, nearly ripped the head off my wolf. He said, I actually got a fright. I went, okay. I said, well, perhaps you shouldn't try and enter into a woman's bedroom in her time zone when you know she's sleeping, without my permission, without my knowledge. What do you expect but that my wolf will protect me? Yes, he said, now I know you're the real deal, Tanya Arons, psychedelic dreamer. I said, I needed that confirmation because I wasn't quite so sure I was the real deal either until you confirmed that. He said, no, he said, all you have to do is call on your wolf dreamer. He said, I've met her and she's powerful. I said, yes, I've wondered why my life has been saved at the 11th hour, and sometimes quite extraordinary, almost supernatural experiences that didn't make cogent, logical, practical sense. I've known for a long time that something very, very powerful protects me, and I worked out over the years that it's one of my totems is a wolf, but I said, I've never seen my wolf, and I've felt its presence, but I've never actually seen it. He says, well, I have, and it's real, and it scared my wolf off, made it back off. And I'm a Meduan of the Ojibwa tribe, 3 levels below a medicine man. And I respect you, psychedelic dreamer. I said, I take that as a great, great, great honour. I've long admired Native American traditions and wisdom and lore and, you know, cultural motifs and your magic. Long been an admirer. And he nodded. He offered his protection at a time when I was under constant vicious attack with the will dispute that went on for 2.5 years. That was evil times too, really evil times. Probably would not have survived them without that man's support. So thank you, Rex, wherever you are. You were a powerful, protective spirit, and I had to not, and a living man's form, you understand. At that time, it was rare for me to have a human man even offer his protection of me, rare and beautiful and powerful and much needed, and I'm still very grateful to this day. They walked together through mud and driving rain towards the governor's 3-roomed pavilion. Halfway there, when they were as far from all tents as possible and least likely to be overheard, Corvus said, "Is Flavius still sore about what happened with the procurator?" To his credit, Ursus did not break stride. He sucked a breath in through tight teeth, shaking his head. "I don't know why any of us tries to keep a secret from you. Yes, sore would be a small measure of what Flavius is feeling. And if he thought I'd told you, he'd see to it that I got a blade in the back at the next dusk skirmish, where no one could prove it wasn't the enemy. And if he thought I hadn't told you, but you'd guessed, he'd have you crucified for being a soothsayer, if he could find a way to make it happen. I don't plan to give him a chance to knife me. I suggest you don't give him an opening to talk to the governor about you. He hasn't looked me in the eye or spoken a civil word since we rode out of the Iceni compound." Corvus said. "Before that, he was as unctuous as any man who thinks he can gain promotion by making himself indispensable. If I'm a soothsayer for noticing that, then we have an army of magicians, and most of them are holding rank. Just at the moment, I think that would be a rather useful. Sadly, it's not true. Shall we go in and see how many braziers the governor has lit for our comfort, and if his hounds are taking the heat from all of them?" The 7 braziers warmed the outermost of the governor's 3 tent rooms, eating the air so that it was hard to breathe. A dozen tallow torches stood about, blazing thick, indulgent light. 80 officers of varying ranks, from the governor himself through the legates, the senior and junior tribunes of 2 legions, the prefects of 4 cavalry wings, and their subordinate centurions and aides, stepped diligently around a pair of smooth pelted slate blue running hounds. Smooth pelted slate blue running hounds. Dobermans? Dobermans are black and beige though, aren't they? It's an unusual colour. Slate blue. Kind of a grey. Which lay stretched across the floor where the heat was best and the rushes driest. A native youth with, for those who could read such things, the clan marks of the Atrebates, Atrebates. Atrebates? I don't know. It's going to drive me mad, isn't it? I have to let it go. Things that drive me mad have to be let go of. Atrebates. Give it a slight Latin swing to it. Longest loyal to Rome. Clan marks of the Atrebates, longest loyal to Rome, on his forearms. That's here. I wonder what the clan marks actually looked like. Curious now. You know why I'm still alive against all the odds, people of Earth? Curiosity. Always wanting to see what the final outcome might be, or what direction I will be sent into, and what magic will be woven, and whose true hearts and minds will light up for me, and who will be kind and gracious and decent and honouring. Most of the time I have ended up bitterly disappointed, but there's good uns out there, people of Earth. I know you, some of you. Some of you come to me in spirit and uplift me mentally and emotionally from beyond the veil. Like the spirit yesterday that was clapping and cheering. You couldn't hear it, people of Earth, but I mentioned it when I heard the encouragement. Sometimes we all need extra strength and encouragement, especially in these weirder than weird times. Even those who knew nothing of the tribes and their affiliations were struck by his looks. Word had passed that the hound boy and his 2 beasts were a gift from grateful tribal leaders to their governor, known the world over for his love of hare coursing. Paulinus's other loves, clearly, had become known among the tribes, if not yet to his wife. Bisexual, or a philanderer, or both. Interesting. A map moulded of mud and stone ruled the centre of the tent's floor, taking up a quarter of the remaining standing room. Laid out inside pale oak borders in the likeness of the mountains and the sea, fragments of heather stood for forests, moss for turf, while a gravel of broken pottery made the straits across to Mona, with white chalk grit marking the sweep and curl of currents that were known to have killed. The island itself was a single unbroken rock, chiselled flat and marked with scratches at the inlets along the coast. The whole edifice had dried long since in the heat of the room. The mud had cracked, and stones that made mountains no longer stood vertical. The smell of moss and earth was less than it had been, which was unfortunate. There had been a time when it had fought a winning battle against the strains of sweat and wine and old diarrhea reeking from the officers who gathered. and the unique stench of Ursus's Dacian wolfskin. Imagine walking around reeking of diarrhea. Thought the Romans liked washing themselves. I suppose on a battlefield there isn't much water to wash with. Oh, imagine having a walking around with shit stuck to you all day long. Shit stained. Putrid. Ugh. Anyway. The mountains were currently the focus of attention. A huddle of small tents lovingly constructed of scrap hide and stick had been recently placed in position on the lower slopes of the tallest mountain. The emblems of 2 legions and 4 wings of cavalry were laid out in rows together with counters marking the numbers of men. Corvus and Ursus. Why is my soldier not facing the right way? Come on, front and centre. Stand tall, men. Only men I can get. Hollow wooden men. Not true. There's a wonderful man out there for me somewhere. One day I'll find him and he'll find me, and he'll be good and kind and noble and honouring of my mind, body and spirit and soul. And his love will be enduring and beautiful. It's a lovely fairy story, isn't it? Well, psychedelic dreamer has to believe in something, you know. Corvus and Ursus were last to enter. The governor's secretary was a balding, broken-nosed former legionary who had lost his right leg in battle and learned to write when he could no longer ride. Practical. He looked up at the draft from the tent flaps. "How many?" he asked. Corvus said, 340 who can ride, 300 of them whom I would trust to be effective. Officers, all of them are fit to serve barring one standard bearer, and I could probably get him to move. Really? The word fell into the space and caused quiet. It came from a lone man on the far side of the mountain map. Suetonius Paulinus, by Nero's pleasure, 5th governor of the emperor's province of Britannia, was so purely Roman that he could trace his ancestors in the Senate back to the time when there was no Senate. That is a long lineage indeed, people of earth. Accordingly, he was a small man, neat and freshly barbered, and fastidious in his cleanliness. His ass didn't reek of diarrhea, I bet. His hair was oak dark, peppered with a flinty grey at the temples and thinning a little on top. His eyes were brown and newly bloodshot, and his nose complained of the cold winters and damp of Britannia. He sat on a carved oak chair draped with scarlet and wore his parade breastplate in a tent where the air was thick as soup with men's breath and men's wind. Ugh. And the muggy heat of the braziers. Without rising, he raised a finger to Corvus, who stepped forward. Every other wing has at least half of its officers unfit to ride. The men say, although not in my hearing, that the ghosts of the dead are feasting on the souls of those who have been in the land longest. And those are always the centurions and decurions, the standard bearers and the masters of horse. You don't believe it? Your Excellency, I don't. I've been in this province longer than anyone else in this army. If what they say were true, I would be languishing in my tent with my bowels running out of my backside, which evidently I'm not. Corvus smiled neutrally. I am, as ever, ready to serve where I may best be of use. Evidently. The governor's gaze passed in succession from Corvus to his secretary, to both of his senior legates and one of the juniors, to the Atrebatan hound boy, and, lovingly, to the hounds, and back to his secretary, who nodded. The man made a small addition to the mountain map on the floor. A small model of a horse was transferred from the site of the governor's gathering camp to the shores of the straits. I wish an advance party to seal off the landing grounds of the ferry, according to local spies and to 3 of the enemy questioned recently. The ferries from the god-cursed island only land in one of 2 places, and both are close by. I wish you to go there and make secure the jetties at both sites. No one is to reach the island or leave it without my express permission. When you have done that, report back to me and I will send you the men and the means to make the barges that will take us across. The Batavians will come to you soon after to watch the water and see how the horses may be swum across. We cannot risk them in the small craft we will build for the legionaries. We will join you soon after that, when the barges are built and the legions are back up to strength. Let's see. Did we want to be doing this? Ursus asked it, sitting on horseback at Corvus's left hand. Ahead of them the savage sea swirled between the shore on which they stood and the mist-hung one not so far distant, that marked the only part they could see of the gods' island of Mona. At the feet of their mounts, my eyes are blurring. 2 jetties were manned by armed auxiliaries who already cursed the cold and the salt sea wind and the cries of the gulls that became all too easily the howling wails of the dead. Flavius is going to hate you as much for leaving him behind as anything else, said Ursus, because he had got no answer. Flavius hates what he cannot own. It doesn't necessarily stop him being a good officer, only makes it unwise to trust him with anything important. Corvus's face was already reamed white with cold and blown salt. His mare was shuddering under him, having been ridden too hard, and then made to stand still too long with the sweat still wet on its hide. It was bay and long-legged, and had been the gift of the Iceni child the procurator had been going to crucify at the steading before Corvus had halted the proceedings with a lie. These things made sense to Ursus only in retrospect, and then only vaguely. Corvus turned his mount away from the sea and the island beyond, careful of the rocks beneath its feet. Ursus stayed where he was, watching the waves break grey on the black rock, studying barnacles and shreds of seaweed, because both calmed his mind. He did not hear the horse stop, only felt a hand on his shoulder. His flesh jumped and his soul with it, and he heard Corvus's calm, quiet, heart-breaking voice say, "I do know what it feels like for both you and him. I can't change the way of the world or offer more than I am able. All I can do is promise honesty and my best efforts to keep us all alive. For what it's worth, I don't despise either of you, but I trust you, which is more than I do him." The hand left his shoulder. Ursus's flesh ached. Dryly, Corvus said, "Don't stay at the sea's edge long if you want a quiet night. The dreamers know we're here. The closer we are, the easier it is for them to taste the fears we harbour." The bay mare walked on over rock to shingle and then to turf. Ursus stayed longer than cold or sanity said that he should. When he left, the patterns of the sea breaking on the rocks were no different from when he arrived. But he felt calmer than he had, and more at peace with his own world. When he finally turned his own mount and walked it back to the noise and false bravado of the shore camp, it was to find that Flavius had risen from his sickbed in the tent beneath the mountains and ridden alone along poorly guarded paths to reach the men who had left him behind. Ursus and he greeted each other as a decurion and his standard bearer might be expected to do, but a balance had shifted between them, and both of them felt it. Ursus grinned and found that he went on grinning through a day of cold and sleet and vague shifting shadows that rose out of the sea and left men white and shaking. Adding to the miracle, he slept that night without nightmares for the first time since reaching the west. Flavius came late to the tent and was drunk. Sometime in the following dawn, lying awake, listening to the unstable sleep of all those around him, Ursus came to realize how far he had gone towards making of his standard bearer a lifelong enemy, and how hard it would be to claw some sense of safety back. He should have been afraid, staring at the roof heights of his tent and watching the certain place where the drips grew fat before they fell to join the puddle on the ground. He found that he would rather have the known enmity of Flavius than the unknown terrors of the dreamers, and that if he put all his attention on the one, he could forget the other, and thus fall back into sleep. You know, I met an Indian woman many years ago. My friend Jared and I met her actually. She had a restaurant over at Bulimba. And I didn't realise that she was bisexual or lesbian or, had lesbian tendencies at the very slightest. But she became completely besotted with me. It was very odd and out of left field and most unexpected. I guess that's what happens when people fall in love. It just happens and can be very discomforting and weird when it's not returned, but especially when it's someone you've just met who's a virtual stranger, you don't even know them, then it gets a bit fucking weird, people of Earth. But anyway, her name was Geeta, and she used to say to me, I went to her restaurant on a few occasions, and her parting, her way of saying goodbye to me was very confronting and a bit odd. She would say, "Come to me in my dreams." It's very romantic, isn't it? Come to me in my dreams. I hadn't realised she was gay either, till Jared pointed out that all the artwork on her restaurant looked a bit like vulvas. He had to actually point it out. I was looking at it going, it was all done in geometric patterns, but it was quite cleverly done, but not all that subtle actually. I don't know why I hadn't noticed it. He teased me mercilessly about that. I said, but she's married. She talked about how much she hates her husband though. That should have been a sign really that things were not quite kosher, but yeah, she was, I don't like my husband. I didn't choose him. I thought, well, that's a cultural thing in India because most marriages are arranged, Didn't enter my mind that she was lesbian, that she had an attraction to me based on sexuality rather than, intellectual curiosity. Anyway, she was very kind to me, very sweet, and but when I realised she was completely besotted and a bit licentious, ended the friendship. Bing, bam, boom, people of Earth. You can love people and that's fine, there's all kinds of love, but when it borders into the sexual and you're not of that sexual, persuasion, it just gets very bloody triggering and confronting and awkward. But I'm the same about that kind of behaviours coming from heterosexual men too. If you don't respect me and treat me, know where to keep that boundary, you get sloughed off. you know, disrespecting of my body, mind and spirit is a boundary that I don't like being crossed. Might cross it once or twice because you just, I might make allowances for people being a bit titillated or excited, but when it continuously is kind of a slathering, it's like, yep, bye, out of here, get lost. I'm very strict about that, but that's because a lot of it relates to my childhood and my boundaries, my personal little body autonomy, boundaries being invaded and violated on a regular basis. So I don't tolerate it. And when I fall in love, I get a bit silly too, I admit. We all get our hopes up that someone might love us in return, and especially when they keep signalling how much they love you. One even saying to me, I've been looking for you everywhere. I said, really? I've been here the whole time. It's ironic. But anyway, I have to allow that entity was not quite in his sound mind and was confabulating and playing a very sick and evil, twisted game with my heart, and I've reached acceptance and I've moved on. But occasionally I dream of that entity, and that's for my soul progression, not his. People of Earth. So, but real loves, true and real, love you kindly and honouringly till the day you die, and sometimes even beyond that. So there'll come a time when I meet someone who's sweet and kind and noble and honouring and gentle and not obsessive and not fixated on me to the point where they played some fucking elaborate game and used their friends and their groups to try and manipulate me. Not good, people of Earth. Not even man enough to do their own communicating, having to do it vicariously through other people. The greatest act of cowardice there is. That's how you kill love, people, by behaving like a lackluster, cowardly dog. But there were lovely times for a while there, very lovely times. And I remember and honour that too. But I won't hold on to that because it was illusory and proven ultimately to be based on shifting sands, shaky foundations, a mirage. Some people like to live their lives in fantasy worlds and mirages, but ironically, given my nickname is Psychedelic Dreamer, I like my life to be authentic, respectful, honouring, decent, kind, dignified, proud, happy, and to be surrounded by people who I can trust to have my back, my front and my sides. Maybe I really am the reincarnation of Bodhisattva that my psychiatrist teases me about. But I just think they're the basic values that anyone should have. If you're going to have a group of people that you work with and play with and have a community with, you need to know who and what is trustworthy. And who truly loves you and isn't just a smiling assassin with their knife in your chest and your back. I've lived that way for too long to ever live in a mirage, a dreamlike fantasy that everything's okay when clearly it isn't. In this inverted paradigm, the post-COVIDian epoch, more and more we can see on a daily basis who are the truth speakers and the truth tellers, and who have pride and dignity and spirit, who walk with their God and all multitudes of gods, who remain open and loving and in that sense are indomitable. You can't kill people who are real and have a real love in their hearts. It's a magic that is eternal, people of earth. So on that note, blessed be. Have a lovely Saturday. Some of you will be gearing up to the New Year's Eve celebrations in a few days' time. Next year is going to be interesting, I believe. Lots of changes. But life is always about change and adapting to the change and finding your own slipstream and buoying yourself up on your own life raft at times. Taking no prisoners and no psychic vermin along for the ride. Just letting them wash away. Sad but true. Sad but true. But peace be upon us all. May the gods of our understanding protect us, strengthen us, ennoble us, and love us in all the ways that are necessary, not just for our survival on this planet, but for our thriving. May the gods of our understanding reveal to us true hearts and minds and show us who will stand by our sides, proud and happy to be our friends, lovers, partners, business partners one day maybe, who will carry us forward, thrown high by strong arms and caught again and gently landed back on our feet, back from the fray each time, honoured. Amen Vasila. Bye for now.